With the new Illusion monsters and Chimera archetype, we've seen the emergence of the branded Chimera deck that has been taking the regional scene by storm. This mid-range one-card combo deck has really been making a splash in the current meta. What's up, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Cards and Coffee. Today we're going to be going over my current branded Chimera deck. We're going to go through the card by card. I'll show you guys exactly what I'm playing and why I'm playing it, and at the very end I'll show you guys some of the basic combos that this deck can do. But of course, if you haven't already, make sure you guys go grab yourself a cup of coffee or something. That way you guys can sit down and tune in. Let's do this. Alright, so this deck really does have so much going for it. As mentioned, not only do we have a bunch of one-card combos, but this deck has so much room for non-engine, you can really tech it out for whatever the meta is looking like. Make sure you stick around to the end of the video, that way you guys can see some of the basic combos this deck can do. But in addition, if you're wanting to see more gameplay or more intricate combos, make sure you comment down below, that way I can help you guys out. But without wasting any more time, hopping into our Chimera lineup, first of course is going to be 3 copies of Cornfield Codal, alongside 3 copies of Mirror Sword Knight. These cards are really amazing because not only are they our one-card starters, but in the graveyard they offer some amazing protection for your end field. And while this deck isn't the most oppressive thing in the meta, the interactions this deck creates is really amazing. But alongside these, I am also playing 3 of the Gazelle, the King of Mythical Claws. While this card isn't a one-card starter, it is still technically a good starter for the deck if you don't open the other 2. This card is really amazing for the deck, not only getting you access to Chimera Fusion, but also searching follow-up for the turn after while having amazing synergy with Branded Fusion. Then after that, I'm only playing 2 of the Big Wing Berfament, very standard for what this deck has been doing. On summon, not only does it grab you a beast, but it also grabs you the Chimera Fusion, which we are playing 3 of. This is essentially a quick play polymerization, which is really great for setting up your fusion plays. Since it's a quick play, it helps you play around hand traps while also offering an interruption on your opponent's turn. But probably the best part about this card is the fact if you control a Chimera, the flying mythical beast, while it's in the grave, once per turn you can add it back to hand. So not only are you setting up some amazing first turn boards, but you have the Chimera plays on your opponent's turn as well, which is really great. Fairly standard lineup for the most part. I could see myself running more, but I think this is the bare minimum you should play. Then, as mentioned, we are playing a branded lineup, and I'm actually only opting to run 2 Branded Fusion alongside 2 Fallen of Albaz. I've tested the openings and the Aliburs, and I really actually enjoyed the kit with the branded in white. I still haven't decided if I'm going to put them back into the main, but as of right now, the deck doesn't need those cards to play, and the non-engine this deck can play really puts it over the top. With the Branded Fusion, you technically have 12 starters for the deck if you count the Mythical Claws. In a 40-card deck like this, I feel like that's a really good ratio to have, but of course we have a bunch of 2-card combos as well, so if we don't open those starters, of course we have other plays for consistency as well. But now moving on to the non-engine of this deck, which you could really approach in any way. First, I'm opting to run 3 copies of Radiant, the multi-dimensional Kaiju. Obviously, Kaijus are really amazing, just great generic removal in this format, helping you out stuff like a Rise Heart and of course Noir. But the fact that not only is this a dark, but it's also a fiend, which is really important for the deck, not only adds some amazing board breaking capabilities, but the added synergy is really needed in this deck as well. Then after that, the next card I want to talk about is actually 3 copies of Crossout Designator. It's funny because I keep taking this card in and out of the deck, and I still haven't decided on whether or not it's going to stay, but this really just comes down to what I expect the decks to be looking like in the room of the tournament I'm playing in. Obviously, this card's great in any of the mirror matches or branded decks you might be going against, but as mentioned, this deck has so much room for non-engine. You have so many targets to counter your opponent's tech cards. I think one of the allures of this deck is the fact that Ash on Branded Fusion does not stop it in its tracks, but there are going to be a lot of hands that you open only one part of your engine, so a single hand trap actually could be just good enough to stop you in your tracks. So for that reason, even though I'm not playing Called by the Grave, Crossout Designator is just insanely versatile at stopping those cards, while also offering answers for cards like D-Barrier when you go to side deck. Moving on to some hand traps, first of course is going to be 3 copies of Ash Blossom Enjoys Spring, alongside 3 copies of Droll and Lockbird. I will admit Droll and Lockbird can be a little little awkward because if your opponent just starts with a search and you draw them, then you can't Chimera them because you can't draw cards. But more times than not, it's actually not the case, but still that's something you want to keep in mind when sequencing your hand traps. But then after that, I'm actually running a few one-of hand traps that are not only good right now, but just great cross-out targets. We have one copy of Infinite Impermanence, one copy of Effect Veiler, one copy of Ghost Mourner, and of course one copy of Nibiru. I could easily see myself playing multiple copies of any of these cards, especially when it comes to something like Imperm, because it really is just one of the best generic hand traps in this game. But since there's a lot of times you'll draw into hand traps off of your Guardian Chimera, drawing into something like Imperm really accomplishes nothing for your deck. The Veiler and Mourner really just take over that Imperm slot, but another added benefit is the fact that since these are monsters, in a desperate time, you can actually fuse with these with your Chimera Fusion. But for me, I've been finding this hand trap lineup to be working really well. 10 hand traps feels really consistent alongside some of the board breakers we're also opting to play. For the next tech card that we're playing, it's actually 2 copies of Book of Moon. Obviously, this card's really good right now, not only being an Arise Heart out and preventing Noir from hitting the field, but this card also helps you play around cards like Imperm, so that's really good because those cards can hurt your deck. I definitely could see myself adding the 3rd, but with the crossouts, it kind of hogs up a little bit of space. Again, we have the Kaijus, so we have 5 cards to kind of help us with that Noir situation, which I think is a pretty good number. Plus, I really wanted to make room for one of my favorite spell cards in this deck, 2 copies of Super Polymerization. Now, more commonly, you'll actually see this card played at 3, and I definitely think you could, but again, it's all about finding space. But another thing to keep in mind is that since we have so many hand traps, a lot of times those are just good enough to stop your opponent from making a board, and then kind of Super Poly sits in your hand doing nothing. So with the Kaijus, and of course playing 2-ofs of Book and Super Poly, it just gives you a wide variety of options when breaking a board. Trust me, I'm citing the 3rd copy, games 2 and 3, against the decks that it really hurts, but I really don't want to clog on this card, even though it is an amazing board breaker card. And then the last card in the deck is the Triple Tactics Talents. I wish I could play 2, or I'd even consider 3, because it's so amazing when your opponent hand traps you, and then you can rip another card out of their hand, and then proceed to keep comboing from there. You'll get ashed on Branded Fusion, then you can rip a card with Talents, proceed to do the Chimera combo, and then rip another card in the end phase. Your opponent basically will start their turn with 3 cards in hand, and that's really amazing. But again, Talents is one of my favorite cards, and it's great in this format. And while it does help you out a Rise Heart, I don't know if you've noticed, we have so many outs to that card already in our main deck. But that's it for the deck list, a solid 40. Now moving on to the extra. Now really quickly, before we hop into the extra deck, I actually just wanted to show off these Sakura Ally sleeves. Dragon Shield just recently sent a bunch of product for me to give away at my 8,000 subscriber giveaway. We are insanely close to hitting that mark, so make sure you're subscribed, and of course turn on that notification bell. That way when the giveaway starts, you guys can enter for some amazing product. But of course, if you're just itching to get your hands on any of this product now, go check out my affiliate link down below. Any and all purchases you make while using my affiliate link all comes back to the channel, and it helps me make content for you. But now moving on to the extra deck, for the Chimera portion, we're playing 2 copies of Chimera the King of Phantom Beasts, 2 copies of Guardian Chimera, and 1 Chimera the Illusion Beast. These really are the bread and butter to your deck. Chimera not only ripping cards out of your opponent's hand, but it has the graveyard effect to recur your monsters as well. Also, its name is always treated as Chimera the Flying Mythical Beast, so that obviously applies to your Kotal and your Sword Knight as well. And then as mentioned, Guardian Chimera being an amazing pop and draw for your deck. It comes up all the time. And then Chimera the Illusion Beast is an OTK machine, not only being able to attack multiple times without destroying monsters by battle, but it'll also reduce your opponent's monster's attack to 0, so punching over things constantly comes up all the time when going for game. But then moving on to the branded stuff, of course you have 1 Rinbrum. This is your main target for Branded Fusion. You'll get to dump Claws, and then that can search out your Chimera pieces, so it gets that engine going. It's an amazing interruption as well, and so that's why you have to play it. But then after that, of course, you're also playing the 1 Mirror Jade. Obviously with branded, this is amazing for the deck. We also play the Lubellion. That way it's an easy way to tag into it, alongside Albion, which not only can go into these cards, but also can set up a killer material Chimera the Illusion Beast. So many times you'll have a pile of the illusion monsters in your grave, so being able to fuse with all of them really sets up some crazy OTKs. And then the last one that I'm opting to play is actually Albalanitis. This card is really good for the deck. Obviously, you can dump this with Mirror Jade, and then it has the ability to search a fusion or a polymerization card from your deck at the end of the turn. But the fact that there's also a lot of Dragon Link running around makes it to where you have another option against that deck, which is really amazing. Then after that, moving on to the tech fusion cards we're playing. First is the 1 Magnum the Reliever. This card's basically a Ghost Ogre on legs, while also offering draw power for the deck, which is really amazing. It's personally one of my favorite cards in this extra. Then after that, we have the 1 Draco Stapelia, also doubling as a super poly target, which is really great for the deck. I could even see myself playing 2, but again, I wanted more room for other super poly targets. First of which, of course, is Garura, followed by by Mud Dragon, all very standard targets. But then for me, I am still opting to run the 1 Draco Knight, Draco Quest. I really do just respect that Calamity lock, so I just want that 1 card answer to guarantee I don't lose right on the spot. But that's it for the extra deck. Let's move on to some combos. All right, for the first 1 card combo, you just need access to Mirror Sword Knight. By the end of this combo, you'll rip a card out of your opponent's hand while having both of these in the grave for interruptions as well. But also, there's going to be Chimera Fusion set, so you can Guardian Chimera them as well. But starting things off for the combo, we'll just assume we open the Codal. In the main phase, we'll activate Codal's effect, discarding it to then add ourselves the Sword Knight. Then immediately after that, we can normal summon it and then activate its effect to tribute and special summon one from the deck. Baphomet now hits the field, and now we can use its effect to search ourselves a fusion spell and of course a beast. Chimera Fusion gets added to hand alongside the Gazelle, the king of mythical claws. And then of course it's very straightforward. You're going to activate the fusion after that. We'll fuse with the Baphomet and of course the Gazelle. Chimera, the king of phantom beast, now hits the field, and now we have a couple of cards that'll activate. Chainlink 1 will activate mythical claws to search, and then Chainlink 2 we can use Baphomet to bring something back from the grave, and then of course Chainlink 3, Chimera, the king of phantom beast, will rip a card out of our opponent's hand. So all that will resolve, and then we're going to bring back the Sword Knight to the field, and then we'll get a search. This is usually where you'll search follow-up, or maybe a different name if you already had one in your hand. But then also if you didn't open Codal, this is where you would search it and then discard it to add something like your Sword Knight for follow-up. You'd get both in the grave that way as well, so you'd have both interruptions available. But then after that, we're going to activate the Chimera Fusion in grave since we have our Chimera on the field and we can add it back to hand. Obviously after that, we'll set it face down, and then we have some quick plays here we can set as well, but we're going to pretend we don't have those. You'll end the turn, you'll rip a card out of your opponent's hand, and then in your opponent's draw phase, you'll activate the Sword Knight right away. By doing this in the draw phase, you play around talents, but either way, you're playing into thrust, so you can wait if you want, but I guess it depends on what's in your hand. Like in this case, we do have Ash, so that's something to consider. But the point is we'll bring out another Baphomet, we'll use the effect to search again. Now we have even more follow-up for next turn, plus it adds more monsters in hand if we didn't have any already for our Guardian Chimera play. And then like I said, we have a monster effect negate, we have a targeting negate, and then of course you can flip the Chimera Fusion, you can fuse with whatever you want. Guardian Chimera will hit the field, and then you get to chain block it with all your other effects. In this case, since I banished these two as an example, we're not going to be able to bring anything back with Baphomet, but we can still go Chainlink 2 Gazelle, Chainlink 1 Chimera. Once again, we can now add more follow-up, and then of course we can destroy 2 and then draw 1. This deck is so powerful because 1 card puts up so many interruptions and generates so much card advantage in the process. But now after that, let's talk about how Branded Fusion can also help this deck. So again, just like last time, it's just a 1 card combo. Branded Fusion really gets it all done. So of course, starting things off, we're going to activate our Branded Fusion and use the effect to fuse. Of course, we'll send the Albaz, and then this time we'll send the Gazelle. Rinbrum now hits the field, and then our Gazelle will activate, allowing us to search. Now we can add ourselves Codal, and we can use the effect and search ourselves the Sword Knight. And then it's pretty straightforward from here. We can now normal summon the Sword Knight and then use its effect. We can then bring out the Baphomet and then use its effect to search. We'll grab another one of the Gazelles, and then of course the Chimera Fusion. And now unfortunately we've used the Gazelle's effect to search already, so it's up to you how you want to do this. But of course you can just activate the Chimera Fusion. We can fuse these two off. The King of Phantom Beast hits the field, and then we'll go Chainlink 2 to rip a card, and then Chainlink 1 to special from grave. We'll bring Sword Knight out back again, and then of course now we can use the Chimera Fusion to add itself back to hand. Then just like last time, we can set it face down, we can pass the turn, and it's the same board as last time, except for now you have Rinbrum as an added interruption. Again, in the draw phase, you can tribute it off, you bring out the Baphomet, you'll add the Fusion and Gazelle to hand, which is another reason why 3 is important. But then of course, don't forget, you also have the added interruptions with your Cornfield and of course your Codal. But then during your opponent's main phase, you can flip the Chimera Fusion, do the same thing as last time, you can fuse these off. You'll go Chainlink 1 Chimera, Chainlink 2 Gazelle. Now you can search that follow-up, and then of course draw 1 card. Again, sky's the limit, and there are so many different things you can do, including with that Spriggan's Kit, like I mentioned before. Heck, you know what? I'm going to show you that combo as well, because I think it's definitely a valid option for this deck. Alright, so once again, another 1-card Branded Fusion combo, except for this time now we're going to include Kit and Branded in White in the main deck. Of course, we're going to go ahead and start with Branded Fusion. Just like last time, we'll dump Albaz and Gazelle. Rinbrum will hit the field, and then we get to search with Gazelle. Codal gets added to hand, and then of course we can use the effect deck, discarding it to search. We'll grab ourselves that Sword Knight and then proceed to normal summon it like last time and use its effect to summon. Baphomet hits the field, and of course we'll search the Chimera Fusion, but again this adds any level 4 beast, so now is when we can add this Spriggan's Kit. This is really amazing because we still have Albaz engraved because we didn't shuffle it or banish it with any of our fusions, so now we can special the kit to the field and use its effect to search. Branded in white now will get added to hand, and then we can put any of these cards from our hand to the bottom of the deck. Now we have a beast and a fiend that we can use, so we can use Chimera Fusion and fuse these two off, and just like last time we can use Chimera to rip a card out of their hand, and then Baphomet will activate the special from the grave. Once again, Sword Knight will hit the field, and now we get to rip a card in the end phase, and then after that you're going to want to activate Chimera Fusion to add it back to hand. But then like I said, we can now activate the Branded in white. We can banish ourselves the Albaz alongside the Spriggan's Kit. Lubellion will hit the field, and now of course Lubellion will activate. We can discard a card, we can shuffle itself and of course the Fallen of Albaz back into the deck, and now of course our Mirror Jade will hit the field and our board is looking crazy. We'll now set that Chimera Fusion, and then of course we can even use Mirror Jade's effect, paying the cost and dumping something like our Alvalanitas. Now you can activate Rimbrum, negating the Mirror Jade, and you don't have to bounce anything on the field either. This essentially sets up a free dump with Mirror Jade, because now in the end phase, not only are you going to get to search yourself Branded Fusion, but you'll rip a card out with Chimera. The Mirror Jade got negated, so on your opponent's turn, it can still banish a card they control. And in the draw phase, we can use this Sword Knight. Baphomet will come out. We can grab ourselves a Chimera Fusion and another Gazelle. And even if we didn't have this Ash, now that we have Gazelle, our Guardian Chimera play is live. And just like any other time, we have the Sword Knight, we have the Kotal as interruptions, and then eventually you'll flip that Chimera Fusion. You'll get Guardian Chimera's effect alongside Baphomet if we didn't banish both targets, and of course a search with Gazelle. Again, you'll get more follow-up. You'll pop 2 cards and draw 1. So that's going to wrap things up for today's video. Thanks again for tuning in. I really appreciate all the support. Like I mentioned earlier, check the affiliate link to Dragon Shield down below. Plus, if you check out my other sponsors at Next Level Anime or Smart TCG, you can use Cards and Coffee 10 to save yourself 10%. And of course, any purchase you make, a portion of that profit comes back to the channel, helping me make content for you. But once again, thanks for tuning in, and here's hoping to see you on the next one. Peace.